Hi guys, I hope you're doing well, and today in Dart Basics I'll teach you about the operators that are in Dart. So first we're going to start with the arithmetic ones. Wait a second. Arithmetic operators. Now they're very basic. Let's just declare two numbers, so that we can uh, work with those as examples. Number 2 is 20. Okay, so the basic is the plus operator. So number 1 plus number 2 gives you 30. Okay, the next is the subtraction. It should give us minus 10. Then we have the multiplication, and that should give us like 200. And then we have the division, which would give us zero point 0.5. Then we have the relational operators, which represent how these two numbers uh, are in relevance to each other. So the first thing is whether number 1 is absolutely equal to number 2. So it says number 1 is not equal to number 2, which makes sense because 10 is not equal to 20. If I make both of them 10, then it works. Okay, then you have the not equal to operator. So number 1 is not equal to number 2. The exclamation mark behind something uh, is used to make it the opposite. For example, if I had a value here called uh, let's say true value. Okay, let's say it says a true value and I set it to true, and then what I do is I do print, I do true value. Now this is second value will print true value. Okay, so the first is that number 1 is not equal to number 2, which is true. The second is simply the true being printed, which I already said. Now if I put an exclamation mark behind this, it would mean that we have to do the opposite of that, and that would be false. And apart from that, we have the less than equal to, whether number 1 is less than or equal to number 2, which should be true. Let's get rid of this line so that it doesn't distract us. Okay, that's then you have the greater than equal to, which is whether number 1 is greater than or equal to, uh, and yeah, that those are all the relational operators that we have. You also have the greater than. Number 1 is whether number 1 is greater than number 2, which is false. Is number 1 less than number 2? That should be true. Okay, then we have the logical operators. And how do you use that? What you do is, for example, uh, is when you have to combine two conditions. So let's say number 1 is equal to, if number 1 is equal to 10, and then the second condition is that number 1 is less than number 2. Okay, now I had these two conditions and I actually combined them with these operator with this operator, which is called an AND operator and is represented by two ampersands. This means that both of these conditions have to be true for the whole value to be true. If I print this, it comes in true. Okay, so for example, let's say what happens if I make the number 2 smaller. If I make number 2 smaller, the first condition will still be fulfilled because number 1 stays 10, but this condition will become false because number 2 is now smaller than number 1, and now the whole condition will turn out to be false. Okay, so yeah, the other operator is an OR operator, which is represented by these two. I'm sorry, I don't know what it's called. It's a pillar or something. These two straight lines. Uh, I have them right above my return button on a Mac. Anyhow, so these actually represent and the OR operator, and what they mean is that one of these values have to be true for uh, the whole condition to be true. Now, one very significant thing to note here is, let's say, while working with these conditions, is for example, if the first condition is true, then there is a possibility that the second condition will be skipped, because while the system understands that there is an or between the two, and if the first condition is true, no matter what is going to be in the second condition, the final answer will remain true. And same for, and actually it's different for the AND operator. For example, in the AND operator, if the first condition is false, then it doesn't even compute the second condition. It would actually return false, because it understands that if the first condition is false, no matter what happens in the second condition, the final answer will remain false. And only when the first condition is true is it will compute the second condition to make sure that it is also true, in order to return a true or false statement. Okay, let's move forward. What are some of the assignment operators? You have the equals operator, which is number 1 is equal to 20. Okay, number 1 is now 20. The next operator you have is the uh, number 1 plus equals uh, 15. Now what this means is that add number 15 to the number 1's current value. So at this point, if I print this, it should give me 35. Let's just print this out. Okay, I missed a semicolon. Yeah. Okay, it gave me a 35. And the same thing you can do with other operators. If I subtract it, it would subtract 15 from the current value of number 1, which is 20 as defined in the previous line. 5, I can do the asterisk equals, and it would multiply the value, previous value. I can do the division. Okay, it says I cannot divide this because we have to make it a double one, otherwise it doesn't make sense. Yeah. And okay, we actually missed few operators while discussing the arithmetic ones. You also have the the uh, I think it's called a mod, and this operator. So what this does is, for example, let's say you do print uh, 6. Let's say you do 8 mod 3, and what it would print is it would divide 8 by 3 and print the remainder. You see, it printed 2, which is, and the division operator actually only prints the whole value of the, let's do 11 here. Okay, 11. This is not making any sense. Like, I need to choose a better example. Let's do 21 here and 21 here. Okay, so it says that 21 divided by 4 is 5, and there is one remainder, that's why we get 1. And on the other hand, 21 divided by 4 is 5.25. Now this should have printed a whole number, but it did not, because the print actually supports, uh, it actually assumes that this 21 is a double. But if we actually have to force it to consider it an integer, let's say I do int num num okay, let's just do 21, and let's see what happens if we print this. Actually, it still converts it into a whole. I think for integer division you have to add this squiggly sign, and that would force it for integer division. Okay, you see, you get a 5. So this is the symbol that you have to use when you need to force an integer division, and here you actually lose the 0.25, and that is the reason that it doesn't go there by default. And finally you have the ternary operators. Sorry, I have a difficulty speaking that. Anyhow, so what they mean is, for example, let's say you have, if 2 is greater than 1, then do uh, print 2 is greater than 1. Okay, otherwise you do uh, 2 is not greater than 1. Okay, that's one way of doing things. The easier and like the shorter method to do this is what we call a ternary operator, which is you place your condition in the beginning, uh, and you do a question mark which says, if this is true, then do this. Here you do not use a semicolon. You first write the true condition and the thing that should happen when it is true, and then you do the false condition, the thing that should happen when it's false, and this would actually do the same thing, print out the same thing. 2 is greater than 1, and let's say if I do let's say int num1 is equal to 1, int num2 is equal to 2. Let's just replace it with variables. If number 1 is greater than number 2, then print this statement. Let's just also do 1 num1 num2 num2. Number 1 is not greater than number 2. Okay, it printed the second value because our condition was false. But if I make it now 10, it would become true and the first value will be printed. Number 1 is greater than number 2. And yeah, those are all the operators that exist in Dart. Thank you so very much for watching and have a good day. Take care.